I'll call the meeting to order of the Park and Recreation Commission for today, July 22nd. We will do the Pledge of Allegiance now. Diego, would you like to lead us?
Salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, please. And welcome today. Thank you.
Chair Longstreet.
Here.
Ms. Connor.
Present.
Mr. Burns. Here. Mr. Hockman.
Here.
Mr. Torres Santos. And Mr. Larimore Hall is not in attendance.
Okay. Ms. Rapp, do we have any written communications?
No, Chair Longstreet.
Okay. Okay, that brings us to public comment, and we have one public comment, Mr. Tyburn, and this is any member of the public may address the commission for up to 1 minute on any subject within the jurisdiction of the commission, which is not on the agenda for discussion before the commission. Mr. Tyburn? Let's make sure this is... Are you on there?
I'm Gene Tyburn. I've been a certified arborist for over 30 years and have visited arboretums in over 10 countries and hold a master's degree in fine arts from Carnegie Mellon. I strongly oppose your passing these pruning standards that affect the citizens of this city for several reasons. The public knows nothing about the standards that they've been ambushed by Mr. Downey and his crew. And when they discussed, I went to a workshop and we discussed standards at that workshop. The standards were so obtruse and indefinable, and they were arguing, how does an olive tree look? Well, of course, anybody who's ever seen an olive tree can look in 50 different ways. But according to Mr. Downey, the olive tree can only look one way, his way. If Mr. Downey was an expert and was looking out for the city's best interest, he would have pruned all the ficus trees in this city. He would not have pruned all of the ficus trees into lollipop shapes that will, in a windstorm, topple over. One has already fallen over in the car wash, and there are more to fall. There's one thing that Mr. Downey and I agree on, and that is tree pruning is an art. And if it's an art, then there should be allowances for creativity in the art of pruning. To have one man control what is the art is nothing less than fascism. And I strongly urge the citizens who love their trees to fight back against the Department of Parks and Recreation. And here is their phone number, 564-5418. Please call and let them know your feelings.
Thank you.
If you're going to be swept along with these ridiculous pruning rules born out of dogma and ignorance, then I insist that all the citizens of the city who are now under the control of this one man's dictates. The public should be sent the laws and regulations.
Time to wrap up, Mr. Tyburn.
I'm wrapping up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Regulations that now govern their trees on their private property, and that a moratorium be put on citations under the rules and regulations and put in the hands of the public and stop ambushing the public.
Okay.
That's your job.
Thank you.
To protect the public.
And I believe this is moved from our commission over to City Council at this point, so thank you very much.
And the public is not being protected, and it's your job to protect the public from being ambushed. And I'd like to see some courage shown on the part of this board.
Thank you. Okay, that brings us to Community Service Recognition Awards. I think we have... No, there's no give and take on things that are not on the agenda today. It's just public comment. We cannot respond to it. It is not an agendized item. Thank you. We have no Community Service Recognition Awards today?
No, we don't. Thank you.
Okay. Any Commissioner Committee assignment reports? Mr. Burns, did you?
One of us should talk about the multi-jurisdictional task force. Do you want to?
It was your first meeting. I'd like to hear your impressions.
The multi-jurisdictional front country task force has been meeting infrequently, but we had a meeting first of the month, and we're going to have our next meeting on, I believe, June either 2nd or 10th.
September?
September 10th. 2nd? 2nd, thank you. And at the last meeting, it was determined that most of the trails would be reopened. The tunnel trail is still not opened. It's got some issues, and we're hoping the issues get resolved by September and that it'll get reopened. But as I mentioned, that trail will be reopened come winter, depending on the storms, it may be shut down again. That's my short report.
And I would just like to say that for the public safety, they should be aware that if they use those trails, the vegetation is gone. The heat is going to be a factor, and also to make sure everyone stays on the trails to protect what's out there right now. So it's everybody's going to need to take responsibility for that and be very careful if they're using the front country trails affected by the fires. But the committee is meeting quarterly, and progress is being made. So we're all getting down to business with it. Any other reports? Mr. Burns.
I'll jump in on one more. The Arts and Crafts Commission is looking for a member of the public. There are 5 members of that commission, 2 from the arts, 2 from the crafts, and 1 from the general public. Anyone who's interested, please, I assume, call the Parks Commission. Or Nancy, how should they handle that?
Chair Longstreet and Commissioner Burns, people who are interested in serving on the Arts and Crafts Show Advisory Committee can just contact our office at 564-5418.
Perfect. I did attend the Douglas Family Preserve Technical Advisory Committee, and we had a very interesting discussion, and I think we'll report out on some of that later, at a later date. But things are moving forward in all areas, I guess we'd say. I guess the big news is that we received a grant that's coming through the Land Trust of Santa Barbara, and it will be for improvement of the Oak Grove Trail and some of the planning restoration. So it was an anonymous grant that came through the California Community Foundation, and it just kind of was a nice gift. So I think it's about $17,000, and we need many nice gifts like that. So we thank the anonymous donor profusely for that. Anything else? Okay, then that brings us to Commission and Staff Communications. Ms. Rapp?
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, I wanted to just talk briefly about the August meeting, your regular meeting. I'm sorry, I can't look at my PDA and tell you the date, but the regular meeting in August is typically a meeting which is canceled just due to non-pressing items on the agenda and vacation plans by commissioners. However, staff is recommending that we hold the August meeting as scheduled. We have several items that are already on the agenda. One, we will have street tree issues that are time certain and need to take place in the month of August. The Street Tree Advisory Committee also has a recommendation to expand the size of their committee, and they would like to do that in a timely fashion, so that's on the agenda. And we have 2 items that were on the agenda originally for this month that have been pushed to next month. The first of those is the election of the chair and vice chair. We thought we were going to have a smaller commission this month, so we pushed it to the following month. And then the commission had asked us, Commissioner Burns had brought forth the issue of youth sports organizations being able to access some of our city parks for some of their sports practices, and staff has met with different people associated with AYSO in particular and other organizations. And we were ready to bring that to the commission, and then we realized that our recommendation put us in conflict with zoning regulations. And so we're going to have to do some work with the city attorney just to see, you know, if we have some options there. So we needed to do that. We didn't realize that until reviewing final reports. So we will bring that back in August. We need to do that sooner rather than later because the sports programs are getting underway in August. And also scheduled for August is staff will be coming to you with recommendations on the different advisory committees and which committees are we recommending the commission consider dissolving, which committees are strong and are recommended to continue. And we will have that information for you at your August meeting. So with that, I just wanted to get a sense of whether the traditional August time would work for commissioners, since some of you may have assumed that we weren't going to meet in August. So
That is August 26th.
August 26th. So I know already that Commissioner Hockman is not available. Okay.
I will be here.
I'll be here.
You know, it's funny how my little paper thing is so much faster.
Okay.
Okay, so we've got 2,
I will be there.
Okay.
3. Okay, well, at least
And
we have a form.
we'll check with Commissioner Larimore Hall. We will also most likely have some budget issue on the agenda, and we do have an item on our agenda to give an update on the budget, so I'll be talking about that for item 6. But I just wanted to communicate with the Commission about holding the August meeting. Sorry about that.
This happens, and I think this may just be the time we all have to buckle down and work a little harder. So we'll be here, and happily so. Well, it might not be a happy agenda, but we will be here ready to work. Okay, that brings us to Youth Council report. Diego.
Okay. There's not too much because it's summer and we're all not here, but we're still doing stuff. We had our interviews today for our final 3 spots, and we actually filled them. So now we have all our spots filled, and they all came from DP High, and it was actually great to see how many from DP came out. It was about 10 interviews, I can say. So, and then we're just keep on planning for the August 1st Teen Born Exchange, what we're going to do, and we're looking forward to that. The main theme is basically going to say how to become a better leader, and we're going to pick 3 issues. We're not too sure exactly what issues, but we're meeting on that, and by the end of this week we should have planned out the whole board exchange. But that's about it.
Okay, great. And thank you for coming over the summer. I know this is your time off, so thanks for showing up. That brings us to consent calendar. Is there any comments on the summary of council actions? Okay, seeing none, that brings us to the approval of the minutes from June 24th.
Move we waive reading and approve the minutes.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. And that brings us to Street Tree Advisory Committee items. Our first item is 1316 Alta Vista Road, and we do have a speaker for that item, correct? Ms. Marshall? Yes, okay.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, 1316 Alta Vista Road is a rather small front yard with a coast live oak in it. The reasons presented were for fire danger and sewer pipe damage. The fire danger can be mitigated through pruning over time and maintenance of the roof to keep the leaf litter off the roof. The sewer can be repaired. The Street Advisory Committee and staff determined the reasons do not justify removal and therefore recommend denial.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Marshall, would you like to come forward?
Joan Marshall. I've lived in my family's home since 1957 on Della Vista, very close to this address. In fact, in junior high school, I walked by this address every day going to school, junior high and high school. On that street, there are 2 lots just up from 1316 that one has a very large oak between what was a semi-mansion and now has a small condominium in front of it. Beautiful, overhangs the driveway of 1316. One up from that, there's another oak. Across the street, there is an enormous oak in a front yard, and those are some of the things that make this street special. Aside from this tree being healthy, it does 2 things. It provides some shade on the front rental unit, which has open beam ceilings, no overhangs on the side except for maybe a foot, no covered patio, and with the cement shared driveway of the 2 units and the part surrounding the front unit, probably 85% of that lot is concrete. Tiny little spots where you could put in a couple of rose bushes or whatever, but it has no break of landscaping whatsoever except this tree. And I understand a few years ago the only other tree that's visible from the street between the 2 units was taken out and not replaced. The other thing that it would do, aside from giving some relief to the tenants there for a place to be in the shade or possibly cool their house slightly, is that from the street and the bungalow district where we're hoping for a homogeneous, interesting architecture, this is the kindest thing that I can say is that it's nondescript, landlord white, aluminum slider window, no architectural value that I can see, and the tree screens that and screens the very, very tall 2-story unit behind it. And the sidewalks in front of that unit I went by this morning, I can't see that there's any damage to sidewalks. And we all have problems. Everyone who has a tree or has a neighbor who has a tree sometimes has problems with sewer lines.
Thank you.
Even
Thank
if it's just grass.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for listening.
Those are
I'm asking that you will go with our arborist.
Those are not criteria we use for taking out a tree usually. So thank you for coming down for that. Okay, any questions of staff?
Yeah, I have a question. Thank you. Chair Longstreet, Mr. Downey. When, if ever, does a cost of repair due to a tree enter into our purview? In other words, we're quoted here that it's already cost $12,000 to do repairs. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but is there some number or some level of damage or destruction that's being done by a tree that we do consider, or is that just simply not on our plate?
Chair Longstreet, Commissioner Huckman, cost, there is no specific cost that has been determined. We look at the tree for the values that it provides and consider everything that is submitted for consideration. But ultimately, the decision is made based on the reasons that are placed in the municipal code. None of those are cost to the applicant.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Mr. Burns.
Thank you. If I could make a comment, that our last meeting we had a tree that was removed because the root structure had gotten in the way of a renovation of an existing home. So there are reasons that a tree will be replaced. And it's one of those things with with that existing home, they probably could have spent a lot of money to keep the root structure in place, but there gets to be a level where you decide that it doesn't make sense to keep the tree. But I don't, but there's no real dollar amount.
Over the years, what I have seen is if the repair actually damages the tree to the point where it's unsafe or unhealthy, that's an issue. But because someone gets roots in a sewer, that doesn't usually matter. I'm sorry to say, but those can be repaired and the roots kept out of the sewer with with appropriate sewer repairs. At least so.
Chair Longstreet, Commissioners,
Van.
the site that the Commissioner mentioned was the basic reason for approval of that was due to the safety of the tree for the pruning of the roots. If the sewer line couldn't be repaired without causing safety issues, that would be a separate issue in this case, and we might come with a separate recommendation. But the repairs really would dictate that.
Okay. No more questions. I'd entertain a motion on this item. Okay, I will move to concur with the Street Tree Advisory Committee recommendation to deny removal at 1316 Alta Vista Road. Okay. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I'll abstain.
Okay. And that brings us to item B, which is 1127 Harbor Hills Lane.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, 1127 Harbor Hills Lane is a Mexican fan palm. The reasons stated were that it sways in the wind and drops debris. In a supplemental letter, they stated that the neighbors were concerned for their view. The tree is healthy, and we did not observe any safety issues with the stability of the tree. As far as debris dropping, we determined that was a maintenance issue. If the tree is trimmed appropriately, the debris will no longer drop. Street Tree Advisory Committee and staff recommend for those reasons this be denied.
Questions? Mr. Burns?
I agree with your recommendation, and I have a question. In the letter from the applicant, he mentioned that the neighborhood has a height restriction of 17 feet, and they didn't want anything to be any higher. But I noticed in the neighborhood there's other trees that are higher, or at least as high as this palm tree, and I just wonder, is there neighborhood recommendations that or guidelines that we look at if people say they don't want trees at any height? I hadn't heard that, and I didn't know if that was anything that the city would consider. Thank you.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, I'm unaware of what that agreement entails. I don't know what it refers to. It may be inter-neighbor agreements. But the setback trees and street trees are exempt from our view ordinance, and which could cause pruning of some trees on private property if agreement is made. But since they're exempt, it's a non-issue for us.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. A motion?
I'd like to make a motion that the commission uphold the committee and staff recommendation to deny the removal of the tree at 1127 Harbor Hills Lane.
Second on that? Second. Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously. And that brings us to item 4, the Carrillo Recreation Center seismic renovation and rehabilitation. We had one more. Oh, it was pulled.
Was it pulled?
Chair Longstreet, this was an information item. if you
Okay,
wanted to-
yeah, I'm sorry, Mr. Downey, I skipped right over that.
The tree at 621 Ricardo Avenue was brought to this commission last month, and you had asked the applicant to supply permits that he had received for his driveway. The applicant submitted those permits, and in reviewing permits, it stated that his driveway could go back in the same configuration that it currently exists. After a discussion with the applicant and his options, he chose to withdraw his application until such time that he can either get a permit that will be able to expand his driveway or find some other option. So he's withdrawn that application.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, that, I think, concludes our tree items now. And we'll move to the Carrillo Recreation Center. Thank you, Mr. Downey.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, Jason Bryan, our Senior Recreation Supervisor, who manages the Carrillo Recreation Center and has for many years, will give this report.
Chair Longstreet, Commissioners, been a long time coming for this project, the renovation of Carrillo Recreation Center, and we're making some great progress finally. The Carrillo Recreation Center is a designated city landmark structure, and it's been an important part of Santa Barbara's history, and this project intends to keep it a viable community resource for another 50 years to come. Here's a brief history, some of the highlights of the Carrillo Rec Center. For the first 30 years of its life, it was run by a nonprofit organization, first started by Margaret Baylor. And since 1944, when it was saved from foreclosure, it's been a city recreation facility trying to uphold its original ideals to serve the needs of the community, and it's always functioned as a recreation center or community center. Today, the facility is very busy with over 100,000 visits per year, so it's a hopping place. The reason we went through this construction project is 95-year-old buildings have some needs, and this building is no exception. Although when we first started the project, we thought it didn't need anything seismic because the bricks that you see are simply a facade. We discovered that nothing was really tied well to the foundation, and then the add-ons over the year were not tied well to the rest of the structure of the building. So it does need some seismic attention, as well as the brick facade is going to be attached to the rest of the building so it doesn't peel away in the case of a major earthquake. Also, with very old systems, they eventually need repair and replacement. The electrical, water, heating systems are all actually, heating in the ballroom is very, very old. The rest of the building is a little bit newer. And nothing in the building complies to current ADA code. Well, not nothing, but none of the bathrooms are compliant with current accessibility codes. And since it was added on to so many times over the years, we ended up with kind of office clusters in different corners of the building, and it was very inefficient, and it was a nice home for some offices, but it didn't make the best use of space. This project started in the early 2000s, and I'm amazed when Richard Johns started this project. We had no idea what the scope of it was, and they did one of these grab out of thin air and said, oh, $5 million. And at the time, it would have been pretty much dead on. And that's with the project now. You'll see the budget a little bit later, but that $5 million was a very good estimate. Nothing moved for a little while on it, so some money was diverted to, I believe, Fire Station 1. And then we started getting the wheels turning in 2006 with a preliminary report, and we were fortunate to select KBZ Architects here in town, a very good firm that did the design for us. Great to work with. We looked at some different options with our money can buy, and to stay within the budget of what was left, we would basically just look at seismic. We'd be closed for a very long time, and the public would come back to a building that really looked the same. And we decided that, okay, if we can go back to RDA and try to get a bigger project, more comprehensive project, that would be a better solution. And RDA was very supportive, and that's the decision that was made. So just yesterday we met with the potential contractors. We had a room full of general contractors, so there's hopefully some good prices that'll be generated here. And a week from today, the ficus is going to be removed from the outside of not the trees. The ficus vine that covers the building is going to be removed. Part of what the facility will, or the construction project will do, will be to kind of spruce up the place, and it's gotten kind of dull, and the color scheme isn't appropriate for a historic structure of the Craftsman era. So we're going to bring in a rich earth tone color palette that a historic consultant helped us develop that would be appropriate for a 1914 building of this caliber. The ballroom especially it's a great room, but it just doesn't have the charm that it used to have in its heyday. So we're going to be hiring an artisan to paint out the reliefs that are kind of, you see all this detail here that's kind of lost, and there's, I think, a 9 or 12 color palette to bring those out to some of the reliefs that you see in the outside City Hall here that really pop. The old school-style acoustical ceiling is going to be removed, and the original plaster restored. Some acoustic panels will go up there so we don't end up with an echo chamber. But this room in particular is really going to be impressive when it's done. The lighting is going to be changed throughout the facility. Some of the old school-style lights are going to get replaced with frosted globes. But everything's going to be done in high efficiency. There are going to be fluorescent fixtures, and we are very confident that we'll be able to achieve a LEED silver level certificate for this building, which is going to be great for the city. Oh, yes. Oh, and the floor, I've been asked right now, but I've been asked many times on this project, are you going to change the floor? Are you going to change the floor? We're not doing a thing to the floor. The floor in the ballroom is a cantilevered wood system. It's a sprung floor. You actually see the movement as you dance across it. Dancers love it. We will protect the floor. They actually were very conservative on the load estimates, so if any construction material is placed in the ballroom, we know what will damage the floor, and we know we're going to mandate that they make a very cautious weight load on there, so it won't damage the floor. At the end of the construction, we will refinish it, but the wood that's there, the maple floor, is from the late 1980s, and it's in pretty good shape. So all it'll need is a refinish at the end. But yeah, a lot of people were concerned, oh, you're going to get rid of that sprung floor, and no, it will remain part of the building because it's one of the main features. The glass block wall that you see here on the west side of the building was not original to the building. It was added on. We're going to be taking that out. It's going to allow access for us to put the elevator in because we need a big hole inside of the building. And that glass block wall will get replaced with windows that mirror the other upstairs windows, which were the original configuration for the building. A couple other things that we found were that the kitchen was not in the original location. It's going to go back where the downstairs women's restroom is now. The stairs are not in the original configuration. The stairs are going to go back to their layout, which will actually wrap around the new elevator shaft. So a lot of this stuff just kind of fell into place very nicely for the building. The elevator is going to go in such a place that you won't be able to tell from the outside that an elevator is there. There's not going to be a single roof penetration for it, which was a challenge for this old building, because usually you add an elevator and you see this big old shack on the roof, and that's not going to be the case here. There's one location in the building that it just fit, and that's where it's going. The ficus vine is very, very aggressive. A week from today, Steve Takaya and crew will be at the Recreation Center removing the ficus vine. This was one of the more discussed matters at the Historic Landmarks Commission because it's had ficus for most of its history. It's beautiful to look at, but it is a pain to maintain. It's very high maintenance, and it damages the building. And part of this whole project is to maintain this building for 50 years. So we're looking at getting rid of the things that damage the building. Also hides quite a bit of the nice striking architectural detail on the building. So the ficus is going to go. I know some people will be sad to see that, but it's going to be sharp when it's done. The front courtyard design that we started several years ago is an option for this project. There are three optional components of the bid package. One is the front courtyard to finish it off with the full landscaping, the fences, the gates to allow it to be an extension of some of the interior space. The back courtyard landscaping is another alternate, and a photovoltaic system on the rooftop of the gym is the third alternate. So it's going to depend on where the bids come in if we can do those. It's a pretty good bid climate right now, so we're hopeful that we'll be able to get all three of those alternate packages as part of the final product. The project will maximize space, as I said earlier. Right now we have office suites in 3 different parts of the building, so they are all going to be merged together into the area where teen programs administrative office was in the past. We'll make much better use of the space. Since we have rooms throughout the facility, we don't need a dedicated conference room because we can just go into one of the other rooms. So we will be able to squeeze quite a bit more staff in there than has been in the past, with maintaining some private offices and then a central open office design. The recreation programs manager will have a large office suite in that area, or a larger office in that area, and then 3 private offices on the opposite wall. 2 lifts are going to be installed in the project. One to get people from the second floor up to the offices, because it is kind of a split level there. You couldn't just do it with the elevator. And the second lift will be able to accommodate the stage. And we actually do have handicapped musicians and DJs that have made requests to perform at that facility in the past. It'll be great to accommodate them for the first time. One of the discoveries on the research for this project is this the backspace where Ada's office used to be, and where my office is. Many years ago, we discovered that the back of the building was actually touched by Julia Morgan. She designed this portion of the building to reflect the architecture of it was then the Baylor Inn, which is now the Lobera office building behind us. And the area's since been filled in. It's kind of odd to have all these stairs here running up to a wall. This was originally a covered loggia, and originally we had a different idea for this space. We were going to make it an interior corridor, but when we discovered that Julia Morgan personally designed this, it was important enough for us to return it back to her concept. So that'll be a really nice extension into the back courtyard. Now for the painful part. 100,000 people coming through a building in a year, and we're going to close that building. So it is making some major program impacts for us. What we're doing is we're taking our largest classes and we're relocating them to the gym next door. The downstairs of the gym will not be part of this project. And it's important for us to maintain the connection with our largest classes. Unfortunately, the gym users, most of them are going to be displaced for approximately 6 months. And we're hopeful that we'll be able to reopen the ballroom after 6 months of construction and start putting people back in place and making use of both places again, and getting more sports in the Carrillo Street gym. Total project cost for this is estimated at a little over $7 million. That includes the engineering cost from Public Works, the design from KBZ Architects, and a contingency in the construction estimate. So it is a major investment in the city. This is not coming from the general fund. This is an RDA funded program, and that's one of the other questions I get quite a bit is, with all the financial difficulties the city is facing right now, why are we doing this? And the funding is in place. If we wait, that funding will not be in place anymore, and I can't imagine what it would take to raise this kind of capital and more down the road to get a project like this completed. This is just a brief presentation on our status. We should be opening bids in about, I think it's 3 weeks or so. So we'll know more then about the actual timeline and whether or not we can get the alternates in. But I'd like to conclude my presentation and answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Jason. It's exciting to see it moving forward after all this time. Questions? Mr. Burns.
Sure. Just two questions in any order. Where will staff be moving to while this is going on?
Staff will be dispersed through some other facilities. The active adult staff, which is Fran and me now, that we will be relocating to the Louise Lowry Davis Center. The youth activities staff will be moving to the bathhouse in the old lifeguard's office. Sarah will be moving upstairs in the Cabrillo Pavilion Arts Center. And teen programs will be, well, either moving to the Teen Center or the West Side Center because those are going to be managed by the new Neighborhood and Community Outreach Program.
One other question. Could you explain to the general public Julia Morgan and why?
Julia Morgan is so I understand, the fourth female architect in American history, our state's first. She's the architect of Hearst Castle. That's one of her claims to fame. And the reason she was selected for that is after the big San Francisco earthquake, of the buildings that were still standing, quite a few of them were hers. So she creates very substantial buildings. And there are people who tour the country looking for her buildings and who will stop in and visit and get a little tour of the Korea Street Gym. Very prominent female architect.
Thank you. Could you show us the pie chart slide again?
I hope I added that right. I think I did.
Well, because we also have a chart in our report.
The chart in your report is actually from John Schoof, who's passed away recently. He created this report a while ago, and that was a commission agenda or council agenda report. And the budget has changed since that original report was created. But I did include that as backup material because he goes into quite a bit of detail on the justifications and the rationale behind the project. Since it was a nice bit of material that was already prepared, I thought it would be nice to pass that along. But you're right, those numbers don't match because the project has changed slightly in scope since those numbers were generated.
And then the three discretionary components that you had mentioned, where do those fit into here? Are they part of the change orders, or are they
they're part of the package. We believe that we can get those in on the original package or the original budgeted amounts. If not, if the bids come in very high, we may consider dropping those out.
And so if these numbers that are in the report, maybe I'm just not reading it correctly, but if the numbers in the report added up to using up the funds that we have, but
we were able to go back to RDA and say, hey, things are increasing a little bit more.
So the 2.2 includes these additions?
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Jason, downstairs in the boiler room, what's going on down there?
Actually, that will be one of our primary storage spaces. The boilers, there were 3 originally. One has been decommissioned because it used to serve the areas now under air conditioning. The 2 that are currently serving the ballroom will be dismantled. There is a little bit of asbestos that needs to be abated there. And all that material is going to be removed from the building, and that will be, like I said, one of our storage areas, because we will be losing other storage areas in the building because we need the space to make accessible bathrooms.
That makes sense. Thanks.
Diego.
With the studios, are they going to be in construction as well? The ones that are...
Actually, the dance studios, one of the... Sorry, I didn't mention this as part of the package, but one of the things that we're doing is we're actually getting a 3rd dance studio where the youth activities office is now will be turned into a little bit smaller than the other 2, but it'll be a very usable dance studio. That one will, we're knocking out walls. We're putting in a new maple floor. The downstairs dance studio has an original 1914, we believe, maple floor. That floor is at the end of its life. It needs to be replaced. The upstairs studio has an oak floor, and we believe we can just do a sanding on that and use the existing wood. It's a very durable wood, so we're trying to, use as much of the building as existing as we can. So that's the status of the dance studios.
Jason, at the back of the courtyard, in between the gym and the courtyard, the little area that used to be a teen area, the alley, what's happening with that?
The alley area is going to be divided into two. The area towards the gym where the dumpsters are located, that's going to be where the heating system for the ballroom is relocated to. The other side of it, which is actually the larger portion of that structure, is going to be made into offices. It's 3 desks in there. Because we are, getting rid of offices and other places, we wanted to make sure we had spaces for all staff and thinking in the future, because, 50 years from now and even 10 years from now, who knows what the needs will be and the office space needs will be. So we do have that designated as office space.
Thanks.
I'm sorry. I actually have a follow-up to my last budget question, because I'm still confused. The 6.7 or so that was in a report with the outdated numbers.
Yes.
It says in the report that 2.2 million that was just approved adds up to that 6.7 million. But if
what happened on that is there was a couple pieces of back and forth. Originally, the budget was $5 million.
Right.
Then $1.5 million was backed out, I believe, for other RDA projects, including perhaps Fire Station 1. The original budget numbers came in, and we were looking at needing an additional, I think, the $2.2 million. The budget's numbers were changing. From that report date, I believe the original budget was about $6.5 million. Or something in that neighborhood.
7.
Yeah. Just from that time to now, when the contracts, the bid packages are ready, that's when the budget has expanded. So between that report and now, the overall budgets have expanded.
That's not my question. I understand the budget is higher. I'm just trying to figure out where the extra $300,000 in funding came from.
The extra $300,000 in funding comes from the redevelopment agency, and they have a capital discretionary fund for exactly situations like this, where you have a project which has come in slightly above budget, and that's where the remainder funds came from.
So just to be clear, we basically had 5, we took away 1.5, which gave us 3.5. Then there was another $1 million allocated in 2001. Then the 2.2 we just talked about, which just went to council, yesterday? Or this last month?
No, a year ago,
That
April.
was okay.
Yes.
And then an additional 300 is pulled from this contingency capital fund?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Well, I think it's very exciting. I think it's exciting that you're going to be able to get a LEED certification on it. I'm a little sad that we'll never get to play basketball on the roof of the gym, but I think we all knew we weren't going to get to play basketball on the roof of the gym. I've been in that ballroom when tiles have fallen down at a teen dance. So,
yes.
These are serious repairs that need to happen, and it will be a beautiful facility for the community well into the future. So I think it's a good use. It's always nice to see some of these things come forward. And get one off the list.
Yeah, I think we're very fortunate because, the reality is there are a lot of old buildings in our inventory, and because of the use patterns on this one, I think it got pushed towards the top of the list, and some forethought on future budget needs way back early in the 2000s was able to get us to this point.
Well, I'm very pleased, and thank you for shepherding the project through to all the staff.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, I just wanted to emphasize a couple of budget-related points. Jason mentioned it, but it's something that we'll be talking about as we start talking about the FY11 budget. The budget that was presented and which was adopted for FY10 did take into consideration that the CREO was closing and that we would be down in revenue. And so as we look to FY11, with having this beautiful facility back up, we can move more of our programs back in there and it's a tremendous activity center. And so it does pose some opportunities for increasing revenue next year to help us with our budget challenges. So I just wanted to make that point. And also what Jason didn't say, and I think I'm correct in this, is that the sprung wood floor is the only floor of its type on the West Coast. Am I correct?
I believe so. I've heard of one in the Chicago area, but I haven't had anything else confirmed of this type of construction. People come look at the plans and they're just amazed.
So for those of you that aren't as familiar with the Creo Recreation Center, I think that I wanted you to understand the scope of people asking, you're not doing anything to the floor. So thank you, Jason.
Well, thank you very much. And we all look forward to keeping tabs on this project and getting to see it.
And actually, one other thing, excuse me, Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, we'll be talking under item number 6, the budget, about a budget work session, and it's our intent to have that at the Creo Recreation Center so that you can do a walkthrough before the facility closes for construction.
Thank you. Okay, that brings us to our recreation staff training and program safety.
Chair Longstreet and Commission, I asked staff to put together this report for your information. We spend a lot of time and effort making sure that our programs are safe and enjoyable for everyone, from children to adults. And as you know, we had a death in our program several years ago. And so safety programs are of paramount importance to us. And we thought it would be good to give you kind of an overview of exactly what we do and take into consideration in our staff training. And we're very proud of our safety programs. So without further ado, I'd like to turn the program over to Senior Recreation Supervisor Rich Hanna and Kimmy Coley. And Kimmy, I just drew a blank. Recreation Coordinator Kimmy Coley with Youth Activities. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Commissioners. It's my pleasure to be here to pretty much tag on to what Ms. Rapp said, that we do take a lot of pride in our program, the delivery of our programs, and we have a great safety record and amount of time that goes into our training. You did receive a very comprehensive and detailed report in your packet as far as everything we do program by program and the specifics related to all of those positions. So this presentation is just a way to highlight the things that we do, the training that we give to our hourly employees, which are really the staff out there delivering our programs, and all of the things we do to make those programs safe. So Kimmy and I are just going to kind of move you through this presentation, and we'll be available for any questions at the end.
Okay, currently the Parks and Recreation Department offers 102 different spring and summer programs, as well as 88 programs during the fall and winter months. Our department has a great reputation for being safe, affordable, and also giving individuals a place to come together and make new friends. As you can see, we offer a variety of programs to adults, teens, and to youth, including certain activities such as sports, aquatics, dance, day camps, enrichment classes, and even drop-in programs. With such diverse programming, it's crucial that we recruit and hire individuals that have a variety of backgrounds and interests. In doing so, we do our job announcements and advertisements in a variety of places. Those places would include, of course, our city's website, through Craigslist, at various colleges and universities throughout town, at different career days, and many local job fairs here in Santa Barbara. Our hourly pay rates generally range between $9 and $17 an hour, where we hire high school and college students on up to individuals with many, many years of experience. Once the individuals go through an application process, they could be asked to participate in a physical tryout. They could be asked to give a presentation, or they could simply just be put through an interview process. The last 3 bullet points, the reference check, the criminal history background check, and the tuberculosis test, of course, are all 3 required through Human Resources and must be passed prior to employment. All in all, the Recreation Division currently, we have about 350 hourly employees each year, with recent years averaging a staff retention rate of 70%. So in order to improve our programs, obviously, but also keep these employees coming back year in, year out, we put a lot of our efforts into staff training. And staff training not only improves our programs, but it makes our staff feel confident and successful in their many different work environments. So as you can see here, an employee who might be seasonal and work only a minimal amount of hours for the city, they're still going to get 17 hours of training. Someone on the flip side who may be a year-round employee, they can accrue up to 59 hours of training and get a lot more of that opportunity for professional development. But if you do the numbers and you add it together, basically on average each year we are training about 13,300 hours.
So Ms. Rapp referred briefly to an unfortunate death that we had in one of our programs, but I just wanted to go beyond that. And every year as staff, as supervisors, we go back and we evaluate all of our training programs and our training manuals. I've been with the department now for about 17 years and started as a beach lifeguard, and I know that that manual has changed every year for the last 16 years as new trends come about. Some of the other things that we focus on in training, we want to make sure that we reinforce staff to camper ratios. We're one of those programs that set very, very strict and achievable camper to staff ratios to make sure that the kids are safe whenever we travel, or if it's a school-based program. We reinforce all emergency procedures and policies so staff know exactly what they need to do should there be an emergency and what's expected of them. We go over employee expectations, and that's not only supervisor expectations, but department expectations and city expectations. You know, if you drive down Cabrillo Boulevard or you go by any of our parks where our summer programs are out or our year-round programs, we expect those employees to be representing the department at the highest level, and we want to make sure they understand what that means. We will introduce new recreation themes and activities. Many of the supervisors will attend training conferences throughout the year, or there'll be new methods of training. We want to make sure staff receive the cutting-edge cutting-edge training that we've gone through and make sure they can apply that to the programs. And then ultimately, at the end of the day, we want to make sure everybody can work together as a team, and that at any time, anybody can answer a question from somebody in the public. So if you're out there and you run into nature camp and they're asking about swimming lessons, at a bare minimum, they can at least direct you to a number where you can get some more information. We are fortunate to have some national training and certification affiliations. A lot of these are prerequisite certifications to the additional training that we do as a department, but we do have, and we've recognized them here, a partnership with the American Red Cross. We do all of our CPR and first aid training through them. Our swim instructors also go through, I believe it's a 34-hour training to be a swim instructor, in addition to training that we'll provide on top of that. The lifeguard training program is about 31 hours. And then the ocean lifeguards and junior lifeguard programs, our city is recognized as having a nationally recognized training program. So in addition to covering material that's standardized throughout the United States, our training program is recognized as providing that material relevant to our beach, and our training reflects that. In addition to the affiliations, we have a lot of training manuals, and I think at a minimum, every employee probably touches 3. I believe some of the staff may see up to 7 of these training manuals. The ones that are up here on the screen right now are really generic. They talk about what it means to be a city employee and work for the Parks and Rec Department, how we go about providing positive experiences, dealing with inclusion, camps and clinics, driving, and then we also have a training manual for independent contractors who also provide a lot of our summer programs and year-round programs. Then to dovetail onto the generic training manuals, we also have specific training manuals, and these really define what's expected based on the position. I'm going to briefly touch on the training for the aquatic environment. When we're hiring junior lifeguards, instructors, beach lifeguards, pool lifeguards, swim instructors, it all requires a physical tryout. We need to make sure that this person's capable of doing the job. They'll receive an interview, and then prior to actually going into training, they're required to attain one of these or some of these American Red Cross certifications that are listed up there. After they've got those certifications, we will put a beach lifeguard through 40 hours of paid lifeguard academy, and for the pool lifeguards, they'll go through an additional 20 hours. So by the time we have a pool lifeguard working on the pool deck, they've gone through about 53 hours prior to summer even starting. Once we've completed that, we'll do on-the-job training and mentoring, where we may have lifeguards shadowing or learning how to do that and interact with the public and our customers. And then once they've completed that, they're clear to work their assignment for the remaining part of the summer. And then staff meetings are really an opportunity for everybody to get together and get on the same page. They may involve some sort of a physical tryout or physical workout component as a team bonding exercise, but primarily it's just a chance for us to make sure everybody's on the same page week to week or every other week as we move through our busy parts of the season. This is just going to take a second to load here. We have a lifeguard training and recruitment video that I shrunk down for you. I also have to participate in all of these training programs to keep my certification levels up, and therefore I can't take a lot of pictures. So I'm just going to run you through a lot of the training that our lifeguards do throughout the city. And as it's going through, we do run this on Channel 18 when we have the opportunity. When we go out to job fairs, we will do that. We'll take this video out. And so all of these techniques here are covered in nationally recognized programs, but yet every pool is different, every beach is different. So we want to make sure that we have things that are relevant for our agency. So in addition to just all of the training that we do site to site, we will also go out to Ortega Park Pool, the wading pools. Our junior lifeguard program trains with our summer camp staff, so everybody's on the same page. One of the things we're ultimately trying to get out of the end of training is that everybody works together as a team and that we do have a fun environment to work in. And hopefully, as Kimmy mentioned, we do have a 70% retention rate. But I think what's even more interesting is we do have a lot of family and friends that apply for these positions, which at times don't start at a high pay rate. So we're able to recruit just from having these great training opportunities for our new staff.
Okay, for our recreation programs and the activities staff, we have similar but slightly different training opportunities for them. We primarily start our training with the interview itself. And by that, what I mean is we have a lot of returning staff who work year-round. So they work in the after-school programs, they work our winter camp, they work our spring camp, and then they work our summer camp. So granted, we do have to monitor their hours, but we generally spread them throughout the year. So what I mean by the interview process is whether they're returning or brand new, they have to interview. So this is something that we've started this year, and if they do work year-round, they could technically be interviewing 4 times a year. The reason that we've started doing that is we feel that it really professionally develops them, not only with their interview skills, but also their customer service skills. Secondly, the activity presentations. We do activity presentations within the interviews themselves. Interviews are group interviews, and we like to see how they will work together as a team, and also who will kind of take, the leadership role, and then who will take back more of the following role. So activity presentations and the actual training also comprise of the staff learning new games, innovative activities to administer at their different camps or programs, and then also being trained on how to deliver them to large groups of participants. In addition, all of our staff are, of course, trained, as Rich already mentioned, in adult, child, and infant CPR and first aid, as well as going through an orientation to our department policies and procedures. In addition to all of the general trainings, we also put them through their specific program or camp training with their program supervisor, and they are also to attend bi-monthly staff meetings as well. This is just a slide to illustrate what our typical summer staff training might look like. In the upper left corner, you'll see the more lecture style training. We, kind of do a little bit of everything to make the day go by as smoothly as possible. So in the left-hand corner, they're learning about the different training manuals that you've already seen in the previous slides. In the right-hand corner, you will see the fabulous free food that the employees thoroughly enjoy. That picture was actually taken at 1235, our teen center. So by doing that, we like to introduce our staff to the various resources that we do have to pass on to our participants and our families, as well as utilize our city facilities for training. In the bottom left-hand corner, you'll see staff preparing for one of those activity presentations that I was just mentioning. And in the bottom right corner, we have Ms. Rapp. We try to invite, people from the city organization and guest speakers, and Ms. Rapp generally comes and welcomes everyone to our fabulous team here at Parks and Rec. And then we threw in this slide as well. This is demonstrating our school-based program trainings that we offer. And this one is a little bit more ongoing for the reason that these staff are in 10-month-long positions. So they not only go through the initial training like we've already illustrated to you, but then they take one more step further and they meet once every 4 weeks to train specifically on school-aged curriculum. And that curriculum they learn and they practice over and over and over again to take back to our after-school programs and teach the different children. So that's what that program is. And this brings us to the conclusion of our presentation. And for the public, if anyone wanted more information or had questions or was interested in employment opportunities, they can feel free to call the numbers listed on the screen.
Thank you very much. Are there questions for our staff regarding? Mr. Hockman.
Okay, thank you. Great information, and I think it's really important that we really pay attention to how we train our staff, especially, in light of some events that have happened in the past, both with the city and at a private club in the area. And I think that this kind of comprehensive training of our lifeguards and counselors and all other of our staff is just so really important. And it looks like we do it quite comprehensively. One of the questions I had, though, was about the training hours and things like that. Sometimes I look at math and numbers, and the first thing I wanted to ask is, you say we have about a 70% retention rate in the staff. What do we think our target retention rate is? What would be optimal? Have we given any thought to that?
Chair Longstreet, Commissioner Hockman, I would say that a target retention rate for us would be about 95%. And it is cyclical. We live in a community that has UCSB and Santa Barbara City College, so we will retain employees for anywhere from about 3 to 4 years. But then our employees go off, and I've got staff that are lawyers and doctors and firefighters and paramedics and have moved through. But if we had an ideal situation, I would say 95% would be a great target.
My guess is that with a higher retention rate, that the initial training time that goes down, and that keeps us as well-staffed, but with less staff time to do the training. So I'm wondering if we spend any time actually looking at ways of increasing the retention, or if we're just at a natural retention break?
In our section at youth activities within the Recreation Division, we actually the past few years have been offering a loyalty retention bonus. And so, we put together each year, it's been slightly modified, but there is a list of criteria that they would have to meet. And those items would be they could only miss a certain amount of days of work, or they had to attend a minimal amount of the training, which is generally every single one, especially the curriculum trainings for the after school people. But we have tried that, and in our section alone, I think the first quarter that we did, or the first year we gave the bonus, we had about a 95% retention rate. So that did work for us. Unfortunately, with just the budget, I'm not sure what the future of that particular bonus program holds. But those things we have tried, and they do work.
Do we do any kind of exit interview with people that are leaving, so that we know why they're leaving, or why they're not coming back the next year or something?
Correct. We do exit interviews. I think one of the things that I can say that I think all of the supervisors do, or program supervisors, is we really know our staff. I think we know most people by name. We're available throughout the period of their employment. So when they're leaving, although there is an exit interview conducted, it's usually that they're moving out of town, and reasons that really aren't related to, some of the challenges of living here in this community. So, but we do benefit from having, a lot of returning staff, and although it does cut down on some of the initial training, it does benefit because staff can go to these staff, or the new staff can go to the returning staff for information.
Am I correct that the number you said is that you believe you do about 13,000 hours of training a year? And am I correct in that works out to 36 hours of training a day? No, that works out to about 36 hours of training a day, every day, 365 days a year.
I think it needs per person.
Right, it was
No,
per person.
I divided it by 365.
The way we got that number was we actually took the average, and of the minimal amount of training they could get was the 17 hours, and the maximum was the 59 hours. We added that. We took an average of that and then added it to our 350 employees.
I understand. I'm just saying how impressive and how much time that goes into it, because that actually works out to about 36 hours of training.
If we were to be doing it daily.
If we were to train every day, so you're training a lot of people for a lot of hours is what I'm getting at. And I value the training, but that seems like a very, very, very heavy load. And I'm wondering if we can continue to work on ways to keep the high standards up and, dovetail different groups training so that we're spending less and less separate time and still being as effective as we can be. It's just a comment.
No, honestly, in response to that, we have, due to us having to cut back on training hours as well, in order to pay the staff, we've already started planning to do more on-site training with staff so that they're coming maybe an hour early to work, or even just a half hour early and then a half hour late, which might in the long run cut down on the excessive extra amounts of training. But for the most part, we train a lot.
Right. Thank you.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioner Hockman, it has been and will always be a priority for us that we maintain the quality of what we offer. And if we can't do it safely, we won't do it at all.
Right.
And investing in our staff training is and will always be a high priority. So budget or not, if we can't do it right, we won't do it at all.
I would agree with that. Mr. Brown.
Just got a question. You've mentioned that this year you just started where you're interviewing, I assume 4 times a year interviews to the same person? And
Yes, sir. And that is, like I mentioned before previously, is that we would have previous employees, and even though they work for our department, they would be working 4 different programs a year. So they would automatically assume that they were working the next program. And so for us, we've had overwhelming, response from the public on job applications. And in order to keep our programs top notch, sometimes you need to bring in new people, but then also you need to professionally develop your employees so that they are continuously becoming stronger in the workforce. And that was pretty much our goal in trying to just kind of keep them in the loop and working hard for their position.
So what I now understand is that there would be 4 different positions that one person may have, so therefore that person would have to apply 4 separate times, and they may be applying against a different pool of applicants every time.
Correct.
And that was a little different than I first understood.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep, that's correct.
And I think that goes to all the different camp times, right?
Exactly.
That's the main one for it.
Exactly.
So, I mean, and I think, we forget sometimes that we have people that are driving buses and people that are driving 15 passenger vehicles, and that the breadth of what goes on. You have people, and you also work with other, like, I know the Police Activities League, in making sure that when they use our vans, and so it's pretty complicated. But the bottom line is, how many kids are you serving? And, those training hours, how does that apply to how many children in the community are being served too? So I know my kids learned to swim with the program, and the quality of the instructors, the quality of our camps are top notch. So excellent. Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much for bringing that to us. I think it's really appropriate this time of year for us to focus on safety.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, just one closing comment. As we went through the budget and we talked about the fact that, we were reducing so many hourly staff, the comment was made by one of the commissioners talking about the role that the Parks and Recreation Department plays in providing first job opportunities to many of our youth, and a real focus of training for recreation program staff really is because for most of these young people, this is their first job. And that is an important role that we do play in the community, in Parks and Recreation departments, whether they're public, private, nonprofit. That is a role that we play in giving back to the community and to the community youth.
Well, and it's their first job, and their first job is taking care of our kids. So it really is important that they do the best job, and ours do. I mean, when I worked at PAL, had an opportunity to see every camp we had, and we didn't have problems. It's because of the training. So, thank you. All right, and that brings us to old business, Parks and Recreation budget. Ms. Rapp.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, on your agendas each month, we are now going to keep these 2 items as standing items so that we'll be reporting on them and providing opportunities for the Commission to ask for updates. That's the Parks and Recreation budget and also neighborhood and outreach services. If, in fact, these are listed for discussion, this item, the budget, we have put as for action, and the recommendation is that you set a budget work session. But you will see this on each of your agendas so that we can talk about each of these items as we move forward through the year. So the Parks and Recreation Department it's July 22nd. We have implemented the fiscal year 2010 budget. I think the most common refrain that I hear from staff in our department and other city departments is now the rubber hits the road, and I think everybody is realizing just what all the cuts mean. A lot of staff concerned about changes to their workload, the impacts of having less staff to work with. So we are all in the process of trying to figure out how we do what we do with what we have. So I just say that in an opening. The rest of the news is not good. When the City Council adopted the budget, they acknowledged that although it was adopted, that the city revenue projections were already $1.5 million shy of our projections. So we knew that we were going to have $1.5 million problem. That $1.5 million has now increased to about $2.5 million, and it's only July 22nd, so that gets a little scary. The state budget is proposed to be adopted on Friday. As best we can tell from the information that has been being released, the proposed budget will have impacts on the city of Santa Barbara. The city administrator, in talking to supervisors and managers at a meeting today, indicated that his best read is it probably means a loss of $6 million in redevelopment agency funds for the city of Santa Barbara, about $1.5 million in gas tax revenues. And the gas tax revenues are part of our utility users tax, the UUT, which for Parks and Recreation funds street tree maintenance. And so it also funds street maintenance through Public Works. So we will be having discussions with Public Works and the city administrator for how we're going to deal with those impacts and what that will mean for services this year. We don't know yet whether that particular loss is a one-year impact or ongoing. So that will also need to be determined as we learn more about the state budget. And also a loss of $2.4 million in property tax to the city, although depending on what happens with Prop 1A, whether that is a loss or whether that is a loan. We're operating on the assumption at this time that it would be a loan, but that'll be a legal decision that's made someplace down the road. So I have a meeting with city department heads and the city administrator tomorrow afternoon, and we will be getting numbers that we will be making further reductions to the current year budget. We will be trying to make those recommendations to City Council sooner rather than later. It's very likely that we'll be asked to turn around our recommendations within 3 weeks or so, so that we are making reductions that will have a longer period of savings. If, for example, if we made reductions and they weren't effective till January, then we're going to have to cut more to get to where we need to get. And the number for next year we're expecting will be worse than what we thought too. So we'll have numbers probably by tomorrow. So with that, our recommendation is, and the Park and Recreation Commissioners have, as part of your comments through the budget review period and in several discussions that I've had with some of you, have talked about wanting the Commission to have more opportunity into prioritizing. If we're going to make reductions, really want to talk about what are the services that should be prioritized at a higher level than others. So our recommendation is that you schedule a budget work session. We're probably looking at the first week of August. I will have a better sense of the timing after the budget policy meeting tomorrow afternoon. But right now we're looking at Wednesday, August 5th, which is a date that I believe some of you were already kind of penciling in for a neighborhood and outreach services work session. So,
Correct, yeah.
and Chair Longstreet, was that you and Commissioner Larimore Hall?
Yes.
Okay. So we know that that date works
For two.
for two. So Wednesday, August 5th, I apologize, that is Fiesta. So we are flexible with time. So depending on the commission, if we could do something that started at 4, I would imagine we're probably looking at, a good 3 hours to really try to, work through some of these issues, and we'll have to come up with a process to do that. So we can finalize this by working individually with you, but I just wanted to get a sense of that. I wanted to let you know what the topic would be, what we'd be looking to achieve. The turnaround time with that, if staff are required to make their recommendations to the city administrator, will be very, very short. So it will have to be, staff will have already developed some scenarios of what directions that we believe can be considered. And we will definitely be wanting to make decisions that are implemented in this year that will carry forward into FY11. So, we're not making, this is not the time to be looking for short-time, one-time money. No. This is, just make the reduction and make the right decision for the department. So that's.
And I would just say that we really don't have an option much on times and dates. So how's everybody looking on that?
I will plan to attend. 4 o'clock works. At 8 p.m. on the 5th is the Fiesta Pequeña at the Mission, so I always try to go there, so hopefully we'll.
So if we could do it and be wrapped up earlier than 7:30 or something, okay.
I'm fine with it.
Okay, then we'll work with that. Could I just get a sense of how early commissioners would be able to meet? Can you do an afternoon meeting?
Yes.
Yes.
No? What would be the earliest, Commissioner Hockman?
I believe I could be there by 3:30.
Okay.
But even pushing it up to 3:30, I think,
Yeah, that
makes
helps.
it a little bit.
So shall we do that?
If you would hold that for now, and then I will have a better sense of this and the timing tomorrow, but most likely this will be a go.
And most likely, where will we be?
Oh, we are going to try to do this at the Carrillo Recreation Center.
Yes, sir.
Just a question, Ms. Rapp. When we first looked at the budget this year, we had what we took off, and then we had a little bit more that we thought we might take off, but it sounds like we're going to be beyond that. I don't have the numbers in front of me.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioner Burns, yes, what you're referring to is the contingency list that we developed. And it's our feeling that since we know these are reductions that will continue and we'll have to make even more reductions in FY11, we may look at some of those things and we may be looking at other options altogether. This is, really, if you put the 2 years together, the significance of the impact is probably, 25 to 30% reduction in department services. So I think we have to really, everything is back on the table. And we need to really think seriously about what are the different programs and services we offer, look at all of the facilities that we operate, and really kind of thinking out of the box to the best of our ability. We will also be looking at, we continue to do well with our program revenue, but our program revenues still are not, 100% recovering costs of indirect costs because we have very expensive facilities to maintain. So very complex issues that we'll be looking at, but you are correct. We will be looking at that list, but we will be looking at a lot of other alternatives as well.
And I think we're at this point unfortunately, where it's no longer just reducing programs, it's cutting programs, because the reductions are getting to the point of not being sustainable. And that's, I think, as we look at what's out there, it would probably do us all good to reflect on the budget, reflect on the mission, go back to our mission statement, what we, as we set priorities, what originally we're here to do, and how we can best stay in shape for the future when there is growth at some point, making sure that we have a strong base to build from.
Yeah, and if I may, Chair Longstreet, just to add to that, I think that, as difficult as these times are, it's very important that we always look at these times when we're shrinking in our abilities to do things. It's great opportunities to look at our programs, to look at our priorities, to look at our mission, and to look, as our chair was saying, and to really, it's a great opportunity for us to re-envision what we are. And I'm just a little sad that it takes us these hard times that many organizations and the city and Parks and Rec and everyone would really benefit from this kind of analysis on an ongoing basis, which I'm sure we do, but as you've said, we're going to put the pedal to the metal this time and really dig in and find out our priorities. And it could be exciting for us to come out with some really solid views of what this department is about.
That's very optimistic. Thank you. My concern and is for the employees within the department who serve the community, and the fact that we know at this point we're going to lose valuable people who are integral to what makes Santa Barbara Santa Barbara. So that's hard. That's a hard one to face. So we will meet on August 5th.
And Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, I would like to invite each of you individually, if you have ideas that may have occurred to you through the last budget process, I would appreciate if you would send those to me sooner rather than later, because we are already meeting and trying to look at some of these things, and we are trying to be creative, but every idea is a good idea. It may be an FY10 idea, it may be an FY11 idea. So I would encourage you, if you would just email me your thoughts, and we will really look at each and every one of those. So, thank you.
Okay, yeah, that's good. Well, let us move on to neighborhood and outreach services.
So, Chair Longstreet and Commission, and I'm sorry, I didn't realize, did you want to? Oh, okay.
No.
Wanted to do two things this evening, because moving neighborhood and outreach services forward is a priority for us. That's what we adopted with our budget. So I wanted to, and there's a lot of community interest in where this is going to go and how soon can we get there and what are the pieces that are going to be real for people soon. So I wanted to talk about the subcommittee that is going to be meeting to move closer to a model for the neighborhood voice. And then I've asked Antonio Velasquez, our Senior Community Services Supervisor, Neighborhood and Outreach Services Supervisor, new title, to talk to you a little bit about what's happening right now on the ground. So the Commission agreed to form a subcommittee that would include 2 commissioners, and 2 members of each of the 3 community center advisory committees. Chair Longstreet will chair this subcommittee, and then 2 members from each of the committees have already been appointed. And Chair Longstreet, I believe that the other commissioner
Was Commissioner Larimore Hall.
Larimore Hall. Thank you. Yes, I did know that. So we had been looking at August 5th to have that meeting on that date, but now that the budget is more of a priority, we'll take that date and we will look for another date. I do think that if the further reductions are as deep as we're anticipating, it will certainly impact what we're able to do with this model. And I think that needs to be a very real discussion. But there are pieces of the model that are not that aren't really driven by the budget that we can do, like the neighborhood voice and looking at different structures for what we're doing. So anyway, we will move forward with getting that committee together and having them meet and begin that process of looking at models for the neighborhood voice and beginning to talk about what are the priorities that should be considered as this group looks at those models. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Velasquez.
Welcome.
Good afternoon, Chairperson Longstreet and Commissioners. It's good to be here again. I hope I can give you some good information that'll make you smile and not.
Thanks. We need it after that.
As you know, we are going through some very challenging times, and what we are doing in this new development, I think, is a positive step forward. However, it works out. And however the budget situation ends up, I think this is going to be a very positive move forward for the community. And just to let you know, the key issues that we are dealing with here are really to maximize the impact of the limited resources. There's no doubt about that. We want to improve the outreach to the more underserved youth and teens of this neighborhood. We want to improve the outcome for families. Enhance the neighborhoods and preservation and other issues, improve neighborhood pride and cohesion, and to create a stronger and healthier community. Those are the general outlines of what this entire move is going forward with. Specifically, what we are doing this quarter is to try to bring this change together. I mean, the change is not always easy. Not only with what we have had to work with in the past, but now looking forward with what the challenge is going to be. So we are meeting to try to maximize the effort with what we do have, and looking forward, obviously, with what could be the impacts. But if you have been aware of our presentations to you in the past, you know that we have been managing to take out rabbits out of hats with a very bare-bone budget. And I'm proud to say that we have been able to do that because we maximize the volunteer efforts that are available out in the community, and the bringing together of collaborative resources that are available out there that we bring into the facilities that we do have. So we expect that will continue. And I think it's more an obligation that we continue forward with that as being a priority. I just want to highlight a couple of things, 2 or 3 things that are taking place now that you have probably have heard a lot about and have considered that as an important item. And that is, what are we doing now with the whole issue of youth teen services? I do want you to know that we do have a program in place since the summer has started. We have ensured that the continuance of these services will be what we had planned through August 21st. We will complete the summer activities as not as originally planned, but obviously we do have a full program. So I do want to assure you of that. On the advisory committee front, they're very much excited about the changes that are coming forward. They plan to have a very active part in this process and are looking forward to meeting with you. On another item, we have this summer, as you know, one of the top priorities with young people is that we provide them with opportunities for skills training and job readiness skills, as well as part-time positions for them to be able to have some type of work during the summer. We're proud to say that we are, I think, doing even better than last year with a minimum of funds. We currently have 20 young people that are working in the Central Library. We have some working with us in neighborhood services, in wastewater and youth activities. Aside from that, we have an additional 38 young people that are working under a stipend program, which is not a consistent everyday activity, but we have also been able to identify that young people, not everyone wants a half-time job throughout the summer. So we have developed these special programs. To give you an idea what a special program is, for instance, we have a very interesting and exciting program that we have going with the airport, for instance. It's 12 young people that are being stipend. They are meeting with the professional staff there, and they're finding out everything there is to know about airport operations. That's the first part of it. They get teamed up with different individuals based on their interest, and get to know what is that job intimately by working at it. The second phase of that is that they are actually going to go through a ground flight school training, so that they actually get to understand the reason why they have an airport. I mean, there's a whole flight element to it. They will actually go through ground flight training, and possibly at the end of the program be able to go up in the air and take an air ride. So it's these types of activities that are bringing in the interest of young people. One, for instance, is already teamed up with a TSA professional because that is where that individual wants to go. So these are the type of programs under the stipend program. We also have a very recent development with the South Coast Task Force, which you have probably got a lot of information on. And one of our staff people, Pete Leva, is working with 52 additional individuals that have been identified and referred by the school district to us to try to identify where we might be able to involve them in, whether it be in jobs that are available or skills training and job readiness. So if you have any questions, I'd be more than glad to answer.
Are there questions of Mr. Velasquez? I'm glad to hear, though, that there's so many youth employment activities still out there. That's good to keep that going. Thank you. Mr. Burns.
Yeah, just one question. I'm the liaison for the Teen Council, and I haven't heard you talk about the Teen Council. I'm just wondering where do you see them fitting in?
Commissioner Burns, the Teen Council will be playing a part in this. As a matter of fact, 2 other members are also going to be in on the discussion of how to go forward with this new development. So we are hoping that through these initial meetings that take place, that we will begin to get an idea of where we actually need to go. I don't want to be premature in putting forward any plans that don't include all your input.
I wanted to volunteer a plane to take a couple of kids up when they're done with their training. If you can identify some people that might need that, okay?
Thank you.
If you'll just get.
Okay. Great. And we look forward to moving the program forward and meeting as a subcommittee and getting some teeth into it. So thank you. It's exciting. All right. Now to our 6-month report on new commercial activities and the fees and permit policy.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, Susan Jang Bartik, who coordinates all of our park permitting and special events, among other responsibilities with the department, is going to give this report, as many of you were on the commission at the time when there was a lot of public discussion about commercial activities in the parks. And we, working with the commission, were able to develop a policy and a fee structure. So at that time, the commission had asked to have a report after 6 months on the implementation. So Susan will give that report.
Thank you, Ms. Rapp. Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, I'm Susan Jang Bardick, Facilities and Special Events Supervisor. Nancy took away some of my best lines at the beginning, but I did want to give you a little bit of a background for the new commissioners. Back in September of 2008, we did have the commission hear complaints about the influx of commercial activities, especially boot camps taking place in our city parks. So we staff went to work developing a policy to regulate these commercial activities since we had no policy at that time. With input from commercial business owners, a comprehensive commercial activities policy was adopted, which included new park use limitations and a lottery permit system to ensure equal access to favored locations. This new policy also included new fees. We did decide that the more premium waterfront locations would be charged at a higher fee level than the non-waterfront park locations. The commission adopted a new policy and it went into effect January 1st, 2009. You were given a copy of that policy, I guess, at the start of this meeting. I'm hoping at the start of this meeting. Tonight, I'm here to report on how the policy has been going 6 months into it. Well, I'm pleased to report that the policy is going well. At this time last year, before the policy went into effect, we had 5 to 6 businesses that had obtained proper park permits for their commercial activities. These businesses brought in $9,531 in revenue. However, we also had a large number of businesses who were using the park without a permit. They either didn't know that a park permit was required for their commercial activity taking place in a city park, or they were choosing to fly under the radar and take their chances by not getting a permit. Fast forward 6 months later, after the policy has gone into effect, we now have 12 businesses that have been issued park permits for their commercial activities. They're bringing in $16,548 in revenue. This is a 74% increase in revenue from these commercial activities. We had anticipated that Shoreline Park would be the most favored location, so we included a lottery system in the policy to have a mechanism in place so that businesses could have fair and equitable access to desired locations. So far, we've had 2 prior lottery drawings, and we've not actually had to utilize the system since the requests from the 12 businesses have not fallen on the same day or time or the same park or beach. Staff believes the reason for this is businesses are aware of their competition, and they're choosing not to schedule their classes to compete head-to-head with their competitors. We had hoped that this would be the case, that this permitting process would be very peaceful, such as this picture of the Tai Chi class taking place at La Mesa Park. Despite our successes, we still do have 2 main challenges. The first challenge is getting all the groups to comply with our law. When park monitors or park rangers approach what appears to be a commercial activity, the common response they encounter is, "We're friends. We're not conducting business in the park." This is especially frustrating to the staff since at that point all they can do is hand out our written policy. By the way, this is a slide of Booty Camp in Alameda Park, and they do have a permit with us. The second challenge is the staff time needed to ensure that everyone is in compliance. Investigative work to look through listings in the newspaper and websites does take time. Investigating leads on information passed on to me by other permitted businesses takes time. Following up on those I've made contact with takes time. Unfortunately, staff doesn't see the noncompliance issue going away. Yet, in spite of the challenges, I do have to say that implementing a commercial activities policy has been successful, since we are seeing less unauthorized use of our parks and beaches by commercial users. The policy has helped provide a better balance between general park users and commercial users, and also it has generated additional revenue for the department. For fiscal year 2010, $16,961 in revenue has already been received from commercial activities, and we've projected a total of $34,420 for the end of the fiscal year. So all of this is a good thing. If you've got any questions, I'd be happy to answer them now.
Thank you. Questions? Mr. Hockman.
Hi, thank you. I think that the meeting where the fee schedule was brought to the commission was one of the meetings that I came to before I was a commissioner and to observe. And as I recall, a lot of thought went in at that meeting to some of the groups wondering if the fees were at an appropriate level and if they could still stay in business. And I believe Commissioner Purcell was asking questions of that sort as well. So I'm just going to bring that back and ask the question, with the feedback that you're getting from the groups that are permitting, do you feel that the fees are at the appropriate level? And is there direction one way or the other that after, say, a year of of living with it, that is there room to recommend a change, or are they appropriate?
Chair Longstreet, Commissioner Hockman, that issue really hasn't come up because all the businesses that had been present at that meeting talking about the fees have all gotten permits. One new issue that has come up is we've been approached by 2 businesses who want to conduct mobile boot camps. You know, these commercial activities want to stay fresh and want to provide something new and different for their clientele. When you're working out in the same park day after day, that's not necessarily new. So they have approached us about moving their camps, having them move from park to park. We, at this point, need to still fully understand that concept and fully discuss it among ourselves, because of the challenge of having impacts to our parks would be greater by having them moving around park to park. We do intend to include these businesses back in to the discussion, and perhaps at that time, talk about changes in fees, but I really don't think that has been an issue.
So more specifically, there hasn't been pushback on the fees, so we know that they're at least at this level not too high.
Correct.
Wonderful.
Mr. Byrd.
Just another question. On the report, we're saying that the income for fiscal year 08 was about $9,500, and then in 09 was $16,000. But realistically, the change didn't happen until January 1st. So most of that increase is in the last 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
And I just, so we're
That's the 34.
We're looking at it. There's another way to look at the numbers. I'm not going to try to look at it now, but the increase was only for the last 6 months, not for the entire year. So, which is why I can see next year we're looking at the $34,000.
Chair Longstreet, Commissioner Burns, that is correct. Though when commercial activities were starting to realize that a new policy was going into effect, a lot of them did actually come and get permits. So some of that $9,500 is accounted for.
And the one thing I like about the fact that you've spread people out a little bit more, so we don't have everybody just sort of hitting shoreline, is I think it's positive to our parks to have these kinds of activities in them. Permitted, yes. But, the more people we have doing positive, organized things, the safer our parks are. So I think it benefits us in many ways. So I do really appreciate how that's played out. Thank you very much for that. It's nice to have the revenue too, but I do think it has that benefit. Mr. Burns.
Yeah, just with the people that are saying we're just friends, we're really not conducting business, has there been any thought of what should we do? And what as I'm thinking about that, well, how much effort do we want to put out for that, the cost benefit? And I don't know if anyone has thought of it yet.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioner Burns, yes, as a matter of fact, Susan and I spent quite a bit of time talking about this, and Susan has had discussions. The issue is really challenged more by the people who are now purchasing permits, and they see the abusers. So in answer to what you're asking, yes, we do need to approach it. We do need to find a resolution. And we will be working with the city attorney. And kind of what I've said to Susan is, if it looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it is a duck, and they have to prove it otherwise. But we need to make sure, working with the city attorney, that we can sustain that. Susan has been doing a lot of work, internet searches, to be able to, connect the people in the park with what she finds on the internet where people are promoting their programs. So, yes, we definitely will be looking at how to manage this part of this mobile fitness program. And I think one of the other things is that, in today's economy, we also do want to be very careful that we are achieving the right balance between helping small businesses be successful, the outcome of having people being active in our parks is a great thing, and we also have to find that balance with, having to do the right thing for using public property for private gain. So it is a delicate balance, and we really do need to consider all of those. So I think we've been successful thus far, but I think, we've done a lot more than many other communities. We've been contacted by other communities for samples of our policies now that we're a little bit further along. And so we'll just continue to look at this. And one other comment that I wanted to make, that, this is new revenue that, we hadn't, we did budget for it this year, but I think it's important to also recognize that it's new revenue, but it's going towards the department buying down some of its budget reductions, so it doesn't necessarily end up providing additional resources for implementing the program. And so that becomes a challenge. This has been a new increased workload, in particular for Susan, who already was quite stretched. But it is the right thing to do, and she's working with the park rangers and the park monitors to try and help with that. We knew that doing the monitoring would be a workload issue, and that's
your detective job. Mr. Hoffman.
Well, my follow-up on that, thank you, Chair Longstreet. Ms. Rapp, what are the consequences for a group that is discovered to be conducting business without the appropriate permit in the park?
Actually, it's written into the city's municipal code that you cannot conduct private business in a city property for private gain. And so if in fact they don't have a permit, and if it can be, so you can receive a citation from either a police officer or I'm assuming the park rangers as well.
So there's possible court involvement
Yes.
as well as fines and things of this sort.
Yes, at this point, we're just trying to have everybody come on board.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ms. Conner.
Yes, I had a question, Susan. If people are conducting exercise in an area that's not delineated here, and if it's not on this list of waterfront, has that been specified as an area? What I'm citing is I walk on Shoreline in the morning and I see a group of people that are meeting right by the where the barbecues are on the west side of Ledbetter, and they're right there in that grassy area. That's not mentioned as an area. If it's not mentioned here, does that mean they're not paying?
Chair Longstreet, Commissioner Connor, not necessarily. We do have one fitness class. It's a mom's fitness class with a bunch of strollers and moms, so they're easily recognizable. Actually, that area that they're in, I believe, is the Shoreline West location.
Yeah, but here it says Sandy Beach. That's why it says the beach at the shore at the. This is actually right past the barbecues. As you're going up the hill, there's a little grassy area before you get to the sand at Ledbetter, and it's not strollers. So I just didn't know if it's not listed here, if no one's paying.
I wonder if it's the Ledbetter grassy area that you're referring to where all the barbecues are, or maybe
Exactly, yeah.
That appears to be an unpermitted activity. I didn't know about that, so I will follow through on that lead.
What time do you go walking?
At 6:30
So, Susan, now you're working at 6:30.
in the morning.
You go for a walk?
In the morning, yeah. And there's a group, and they will actually be walking up the hill with their mats in that area, and they're going up the hill, and then they kind of are holding that space.
Well,
so
I'm sure staff will follow up on that. Are there any other? Are there any other questions? Thank you for all your work on this. It seems to be running smoothly, and I think it meets the needs that needed to. And I would express my gratitude for the groups that are cooperating and making it easier for you. So for all of us, and doing the right thing. So
I second that.
thank you. Okay, and our last item is for information, and it is our annual advisory committee reports. And I would say, if there's questions on them?
Yes, and Chair Longstreet, I thought it would be good to I'll just do a couple of introductory comments and then questions that commissioners have on the various committees. Just as an overview, because staff is we've been developing our recommendations that we'll bring to the commission in August for the committees that we are going to recommend that they be dissolved or suspended. So in going through these reports, you can pretty much tell which are the ones that are not working effectively now, or they don't need to be in that format any longer. But I will just tell you that we are recommending that action be taken on active adults, adapted advisory committee, aquatics advisory committee, the Douglas Family Preserve Technical Advisory Committee, the Franceschi Park Advisory Committee, Skaters Point Advisory Committee, and the Tennis Advisory Committee. So we will be coming to you and talking to you about those committees. And again, and then understanding that the 3 community center advisory committees, and the Youth Council is also not listed here, those 3 those 4 advisory committees will be discussed as part of neighborhood and outreach services, and whether changes are proposed or not, that will go through a separate process. And again, our intent was to see whether it is possible to reduce the number of Brown Act committees, to reduce the workload, but still retain the ability to have community input into our programs. So with that, we're happy to answer any questions that you had on the various reports. And I think each of you got a full copy of the Creeks report, since some packets were only printed on one side.
Okay. I would just like to report that we did discuss dissolving the DFP Technical Advisory Committee. And it is complicated for the advisory groups to look at that. They bring up good points, but I think we need to keep that dialogue open with the groups. I would like to encourage commissioners that are liaisons to different groups to try to get out and meet with your group, make yourself available to hear what people think about it, just so that we have the dialogue going. That's important. We'll be looking at it from a very different point of view than they are. But, please make sure you make some contact with people that you know, key people on the committees that you're liaison to that are up for dissolution.
I have just a question. As to Skater's point, I honestly didn't know that advisory group existed. And I also felt that teen council had a more active part in it than I think it does. What direction might we be taking, or have you given it much thought yet?
Judith Cook is here. Judith Cook McCaffrey is here, and she can speak to the creation of the Skaters Park Advisory Committee, and then how it's played out, and then some of the continuing challenges that we have at the skate park.
Chair Longstreet, Commissioner Burns. Let me get my information here. This committee was originally started, let me check my, believe in 2006. When some concerns were brought before the commission regarding youth being able to safely, young people being able to safely use the skate park during the week, and initially a parent had requested that we set aside special time during the week for youth 12 and under. And there was much discussion about that, and at the time the commission set aside 2 hours on Saturday that would be a youth-only time. At that same time, an advisory committee was created, and members of the community were recruited for the advisory committee. And the group actually met quite successfully for about a year. But since we really, and they were very excited about talking about, building a new skate park, all these new things that we could do. But since that really wasn't in the cards at the time, building any new facilities, after more than a year, there really wasn't work that held the committee's interests. And for several months, we had a difficult time actually maintaining even a quorum for the meeting. So in this case, we've made staff has made the recommendation that this committee be converted to an ad hoc committee, and it be reformed when there actually is a project that community members can work on. Oh, and then your question about the youth council. We did have one member. The committee had several liaisons from recreation programs manager, staff from the sports section, a youth council member, arts and crafts show member, that all sat, as well as community members that sat on the committee. So a youth council member was assigned to that committee, and that person attended the meetings.
And Chair Longstreet and Commissioner Burns, I think the reality is we have challenges with our skate park, and it's a facility that is operating in a way that it actually was designed to, which is it was never designed to be a supervised facility. In its current design, it really isn't feasible that it be supervised without requiring 3 to 4 staff to effectively contain the environment, which is not financially feasible. But all that said, the skate park has some issues. And we have, I think that as the commission, this is probably the next step that comes back to the commission to tackle. We tried the skate park advisory committee, and the goal of having that committee was to have youth skaters, adult skaters. I think we also had a skate shop representative.
Yes.
And, you know, to bring those people together to talk about addressing some of those use issues. And they're challenging issues, and the advisory committee just couldn't be sustained. So I think we're at the point of looking in a different direction. And so I think, you know, the Youth Council was involved in the fundraising for it. They were involved in the design of it. They really haven't been involved in the operation of it, but frankly, it really has been more a matter of to what degree are we monitoring the use and staff resources to do that. And I think that, you know, we need to look at some other creative solutions. So I think it probably is time for it to come back to the commission and to discuss other directions that we might go in. And that's kind of where we are.
Sure. But yeah, why it came up is I'm also the liaison to the arts and crafts, and that advisory committee at times has made comments that sometimes the Skaters Park causes problems, and that basically means less income because tourists really don't. Some tourists like to watch the people skate. Other people would rather have a quiet time and purchase items from the artisans. So there's some issues, and you're right. I don't have a solution either. But that's.
And there are also safety issues, and we get a lot of information from the arts and crafts show members about. We get videos of, you know, safety issues and interactions between skaters and others. So there are some real issues, and I think that part of it is just the design that we ended up with as part of community priorities and the location of the skate park. So we have a lot of factors that went into why it is what it is, and now we have something that is not really it's really designed to be a drop-in facility, unsupervised, and how it's used is how it's used. And what some in the community want is a controlled facility, so the behavior is being controlled, that it's only allowing activities that are allowed by, you know, the signage, et cetera. And so we really have a difficult situation with those two facts.
Those of us that were around when that whole process went through would not have put it there as our first choice. It was not our first choice. And you're right. We have conflicting issues, interests in that area. And at the time when we built that facility, once you start monitoring it the way we were told, you accept the liability for what happens. When you sign it and have it open to the public, it is a use at your own risk facility, which is what we have. And it is made for a certain level of skater. And that is what we have. So the built-in conflicts of it, I think we all wanted some other spots, and we didn't get them. That was a torturous, about 3 years process to get any place. So, compromise is a horrible thing sometimes.
You're right, because originally when we did the planning on this, we wanted to have a couple bowls at different places that less experienced skaters at Mackenzie, wasn't that? We wanted.
Well,
to
we
have like a
wanted
little
Mackenzie, we
drop-in.
wanted Mesa,
Yeah.
we wanted across the street at the railroad property. I mean, we had a
Yeah, we
lot
had
of
a
different
lot.
spots lined up. And
But, yeah, but our plan was not to have such an advanced spot. We wanted to have other, but it just didn't work out that way, unfortunately. But,
so now we have to do what we have to do.
But just the greatest challenge, aside from where it is and what it's just how it's designed. I was just in a meeting last week with Parks and Recreation staff from other local communities, and we were all talking about this. And other skate parks that work effectively are the ones that are designed to be secured, so that it can be a contained environment, so that you can control the behavior. And that is not what our park was intended to be, and it can't be managed without a significant staff, and we're not required by law to provide that. And so it is, I equate it to basketball courts. There are drop-in basketball games at basketball courts all over, and that's really how it's designed to be functioning. But we also know that there are challenges and conflicts, and just because that's how it's supposed to be doesn't mean that that's how it is. So
Yeah, it's just
it is
another
not a
playground,
resolved
really.
issue.
It is, to me, that's what it is it's another playground aimed at an older, more challenging group to manage. But
And I'm actually glad we have a skaters park, because it was something that I wanted to have, and it doesn't have, let's say, of what I wanted it to be. Not that I was a part of it. We've got 75-80% of it, so it's good that we have it. It fills a need that's here. I don't want to just say that there's only bad things that have happened about it. There are some good things out of it.
no, that's very,
Absolutely.
very true. And, I think what I would say is if we could, like Ada was saying, move on with more facilities and take the pressure off it. If we could put kids out into the neighborhood, dream a dream. But there's a lot of things that would make it function better even without changing it. And it's not going to happen right now. So I guess, thank you for taking care of it the best you can. So, but the other thing is, I don't think it was ever, back to your original question, Youth Council was ever going to monitor it. And this is something that came up at Douglas Family Preserve, and it's something I want us to kind of keep in our minds as we look at these committees is, the buck stops here. In a sense, it really stops at City Council, but a lot of these, like the Douglas Family Preserve, the one thing that came to my mind as we were discussing it, and we have a wonderful technical advisory committee, and they do tremendous work. They have very good ideas. But in these current times, when there's a problem at a park or whatever, it comes to this commission, and it will continue. There will be a place for the public to voice their concerns and do the things that need to happen. So, okay. Any questions on the advisory reports at this point? I think we'll get more into that next month on advisory committees.
Chair Longstreet, Commissioner Burns, you did send me an email with a question on Franceschi Park. Would you like for me to address that?
I was out of town for the weekend, and I read the report last night, and as of right now, I do not remember exactly what my question was.
Your question.
But I'm ready for it. If you,
Okay, your question was, in reading the report from the Franceschi Park Advisory Committee, in which the committee actually did recommend that it be suspended or dissolved, because there basically is no funding for any projects to take place there. And your question was, who's looking for funding? And the answer is, it would be us, and not very hard. And I say that only because our priority is for looking for funding for projects in parks where there is more public use of those parks. However, Franceschi Park is unusual in its historic nature of the horticultural aspects of the park. And so were we to ever learn of any grant opportunities that are a nice fit with that historic aspect, you can bet we will be putting together a grant for that kind of work.
Thank you. And as that came up, I remember I also wrote myself a note on the Tennis Advisory Committee. Will they be turning into more of a fundraising group if we don't think we need them on a technical advisory committee?
I think that would be a great discussion for when we talk about the restructuring of the advisory committees.
Okay.
True.
Well, if there are no further questions,
Saying that we're at the end of the agenda,
we are at the end of the agenda.
move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.